True poverty is not limited to lack of money, but it also manifests itself when we allow our mind to become lazy. The most dangerous kind of need is intellectual poverty, which we ourselves create by eating our minds with words that weaken and habits that steal the clarity of thought. An ancient Jewish wisdom teaches that the mind can be strengthened as a muscle as long as it is exercised with conscience. There is a simple principle, tested over the centuries, capable of turning your mind into just 7 days. It is not magic or miraculous promises, but a practice so basic that its strength is precisely in simplicity. This method makes thinking clearer, wiser decisions, and more stable life. Imagine a person carrying water in a cracked pitcher. As much as it fills him, the water always drips. Thus many people live. They accumulate knowledge, but lose them by habits that disperse their attention, becoming weaker even when they strive. This principle acts like a patch in these cracks, teaching to retain mental strength and turn it into existential wealth. Jewish families transmit this knowledge for generations, not to create geniuses overnight, but to cultivate a habit that converts a common mind into a powerful mind. Modern psychology confirms the mind molds itself as it feeds it. Daniel Kahneman talked about two thought systems, one fast, emotional and automatic, another slow, reflective and demanding. When we do not exercise the mind, it operates only in fast mode, falling into traps. But when learning to slow down and focus, we turn our minds into a strength tool. Viktor Frankl remembered that even when we lose everything, one thing remains: the ability to choose our attitude in the face of circumstances. A strong mind does not drown in chaos, but finds meaning in it. This principle is a small daily step that, in a week, already strengthens the intellect. It is not a novelty of a generation, but a millennial truth. The great problem of modern man is the fragmentation of the mind, hundreds of news, thousands of notifications, a constant noise. We think we are living, but in reality we are dragged by habits, not conscious choices. Jewish wisdom already warned about it long before the digital age. She taught, a mindless mind becomes a slave. Think of a wheel spinning at excessive speed. At first glance it seems full of energy, but in fact loses stability and can crumble at any time. This works of overloaded mind of random information, rotates without moving. Many people attribute mental weakness to age or destination, but in fact it is the result of habits. Carol Dweck talked about growth mindset. If you believe the mind can be trained, it develops. If you think it's as it is, it stagnates. The error of many is to give up on mental strength before it even tries it to cultivate. The Jewish masters taught children to dedicate daily time to words, reading, reflection, and repetition. It was not to take notes, but to exercise the mind. They knew that, like a muscle, it only strengthens with continuous effort. Modern psychology adds, the mind is stolen by small errors. James Clear wrote about the power of habits. If every day you are distracted by trivialities, it will become a system. The mind gets used to chaos. But if daily you pay attention to a useful word, a note, or reflection, it also becomes a system. Morgan Housel noted that behavior is more important than knowledge. You may know 1,000 facts, but if your habits lead to distraction, the mind remains fragile. It only strengthens itself when knowledge becomes practice. In Jewish culture, there is a customary time for break, the Shabbat. It is not just a religious tradition, but an exercise that teaches to value time and attention. One day to disconnect from the rush and allow the mind to rest. It is not a waste of time, but strengthening. The mind purifies itself and then operates more strongly. Most misunderstand that a strong mind requires years of study or rare gift. In fact, it is born from repeated small steps many times. That's why this principle works in 7 days. It's simple, but the direction changes. In a week, the mind is already clearer because the habit it begins to consolidate. The basis of Jewish wisdom is the belief that words create reality. What you repeat daily does not only form your mood, but the very structure of thought. If someone says, I can't, the mind seeks to confirm this weakness. If you say, I will try, the mind seeks solutions. Imagine a garden where you plant seeds every day, some weeds, some fruits. The earth accepts everything. This is the mind, absorbs any word you repeat. The question is what will sprout. A story about a young man from Vilnius illustrates this. He was a mediocre student and often complained, I'm very dumb. Your master once said, every time you say that, you are stealing your own future. The boy changed his words. He repeated, I'm learning, I'm growing up. Years later, he became a rabbi respected for thousands. His mind was not a gift of destiny, but the result of the words he planted in his heart. Modern psychology confirms. Angela Duckworth talked about perseverance. She doesn't come from talent, but from internal dialogue. Who rests on with words of strength advances even in difficulties. Who repeats words of defeat gives up earlier. Naval Ravikant talked about the compound effect of skills. Each time you choose the right words, it makes a small investment. The mind does not suddenly strengthen, but gradually, as interest that accumulates. Ryan Holiday, remember, the obstacle is the way. When you face a difficulty, your words define your reaction. Facing how an end weakens the mind. Face as a lesson strengthens it. Many people underestimate the power of words, thinking they are unimportant details, but they are tools that can hurt or protect. If you do not control them, your mind will always be vulnerable. Jewish wisdom teaches, start with a word, and life will change. Mental force is not built in the abstract, but in concrete, through what you repeat to yourself every day. If for 7 days you replace words of weakness with words of power, you will already see results. Another mistake that weakens the mind and steals the future is constant haste. The mind does not become fragile only for idleness, but also by the rush without break. Jewish wisdom teaches the pause is as important as the action. Shabbat is not just a tradition, but a practice that teaches to value time and attention. One day to stop working and see life, leaving the whirlwind of tasks and recovering the mind. At this point, strength arises because the mind finally rests and clarifies. Modern science says the same. Cal Newport wrote about deep work. To have a strong mind, it is not enough to work more. You need to know how to silence the noise and focus on what really matters. For the mind to really focus, it needs breaks that clean it. An ancient story illustrates this clearly. A merchant worked nonstop, fearing that any interruption would make him lose opportunities. Money flowed, but his mind became increasingly dispersed, until, one day, he forgot a crucial deal and lost more than he had won in a month. It was then that he understood. Rest is not waste of time, but protection of what has already been achieved. He started to reserve one day a week without negotiations. Since then, your mind has become clearer and your business more stable. Morgan Housel has already written that wealth is not just what you earn, but the ability to retain what you have. And retaining is only possible when the mind is calm and attentive. Most err right there. They believe that the faster one acts, the more it accumulates. But the hurry steals attention and with it the money. A mind that never rests weakens. As Greg McKeown said, the principle of least but better is in millennial wisdom, valuing quality, not quantity. 1 hour of conscious work is worth more than 10 hours of chaos. Therefore, the break is not a luxury, but part of the rule that strengthens the mind. If you learn to give your thinking rest even for a day and a week, you will notice more clarity on the way. The fifth failure that weakens the mind and removes prosperity is to underestimate the power of small steps. Many people want immediate results, but Jewish wisdom teaches the world is built by brick. An old rabbi told the parable of a man who planted a winery, but, impatient with slow growth, it pulled the seedlings to check the roots and ended up without harvest. Another, however, took care of the earth every day. Years later, as wine fed generations. So it is with the mind. If you read 1 page a day, learn a new word, analyze a mistake, your intellect strengthens yourself. If you expect a miracle, you have empty hands. James Clear talks about the power of small habits. Today they are almost invisible seeds. Tomorrow, a forest. Charles Duhigg explains that each habit triggers a chain of action. A single positive routine can transform a lifetime. Angela Duckworth calls it grit persistence. Talent does not make the mind strong, makes discipline and systemicity. You may not be the brightest in the room, but if you add a grain of knowledge a day, over time you will exceed those who started ahead. Jewish tradition reinforces this with the principle of Masnavi by a steady line by line. No one required the student to dominate everything at once, but constant repetition transformed the young man into wise. In the modern world, logic is the same. You can lose the day on social networks, on the run without direction, where you can take a small daily step to strengthen your mind. It is these steps that build wealth. Most make mistakes at even belonging to this process, thinking that a book page makes no difference. But it is exactly this page that can light the spark of change. The sixth trap that weakens the mind and empties pockets is to live without discipline. A person may have talent, even knowledge, but without discipline everything crumbles. Jewish families have been teaching a simple rule for centuries: order outside, order inside. In the house, each thing has its place. In life, each action has its time. Without it, the mind is lost in chaos. Imagine a merchant who opens his store now at 7 a.m., sometimes at 10 a.m., sometimes it doesn't even appear. How will customers trust him? Your business is doomed to failure, but if he always opens the door at the same time, people know that man is reliable. The same goes for your mind. If not trained by discipline, it will always be unstable. Cal Newport calls this deep work. When you can focus without distractions, your intellect grows exponentially. Greg McKeown teaches that less, but better is not petty, but clear choice. If you set too much goals, disperses. Select the essentials and do it with discipline every day. Then the strength is born. Ryan Holiday says the obstacle is the way discipline turns barriers into steps. It is the step taken when you're tired, when you don't want to, that makes you stronger. And it is the discipline that generates wealth. Without it, the person always spends more than he earns, hence learning, the important dialogue, the decision that could change everything. Jewish wisdom adds a crucial detail. Discipline is not punishment, but respect for yourself. Maybe controlling yourself is able to lead others. Who is sloppy inside will never build anything but illusions. Most dare to see discipline as prison. In fact, it is she who releases the mind, eliminates chaos, weakness, necessary ways, and leaves only what leads to strength. The seventh failure, which keeps the mind fragile and persistent poverty, is living without purpose. You can work on dawn at dusk, but if you don't know why, exhaustion will consume you faster than scarcity. Viktor Frankl wrote that the human being supports almost everything if he has a why. Jewish tradition echoes this. The meaning is the lamp that guides by darkness. Imagine three masons. When asked about your work, one replies, I carry stones to win my bread. Another says, I build a wall. The third smiles, ergo a temple. Everyone does the same thing, but the third carries the stones more lightly, because his heart knows the purpose. Meaningless money becomes dust. You can accumulate, but if you don't know what, they will run down between your fingers. When you have a purpose, support your family, develop a legacy, help others, it comes to life and returns to you. Simon Sinek calls the start why. Without it, life becomes a race without a rival. With it, every detail becomes part of the journey. Here is another aspect of Shabbat. It's not just rest, but an invitation to stop and ask, why am I walking? In Jewish tradition, wealth has never been just about money. It's about time, family, meaning. A person can be poorly poor, but if he has a purpose, he is already rich. The reverse is also true. One can be surrounded by gold, but if the soul is empty, this is true poverty. Most do not realize when it falls into this trap. Repeats three dangerous words so much, and it is these words that weaken the mind and steal fate. When something does so much, you stop seeing meaning. To fight, to dream. Jewish wisdom teaches the opposite. Do not allow indifference to settle. Keep your flame, for it is your true treasure. Here's the final secret. Money flows to where there is purpose. It comes to who knows why they work. Flee from those who don't care. Now we get to the center point. All the pitfalls that keep a person in poverty boil down to three destructive words. I don't care. This phrase is poison. It erodes the meaning, annihilates discipline, and erases attention. Those who repeat it fail to see the connection between their actions and the results. It lives as if life could be postponed to tomorrow, but tomorrow invariably turns into never. Millennial wisdom teaches that fate does not depend on the circumstances, but the words we pronounce, the thoughts we cultivate, and the choices we make. If you sow indifference, harvest empty. If it plants purpose, gratitude, and effort, the harvest will be of strength and abundance. Today you can take the first step towards change. It is not necessary millions, but simple and accurate actions. First, stop. Ask yourself an honest question. Why do I live? Why work? Why do I really want money? Answer without excuses. Second, eliminate from your vocabulary the sentences that steal your energy. Replace them with words of clarity and recognition. Say, I'm building my legacy. I strengthen my family. I learn to be stronger every day. Third, dedicate at least 30 minutes daily to an important task with absolute focus, without distractions, without haste. That this becomes a ritual. These repeated small gestures will return to you the control over your own way. The sages have always knew wealth is not just what is in the wallet, but what lies within you. If the interior is empty, the pocket will remain like this too. But if purpose, gratitude, and determination lie there, money finds your way to you. Remember, your words are keys. They can lock doors or open them. Never say, I don't care, because by doing so, you are stealing from yourself the future. And here is the most powerful truth. You are not weak. He just forgot that strength, discipline, and meaning are the true foundations of wealth. Remember, and start acting today, without fuss, without a show. Only the practical wisdom that, when applied, transforms.